The New York Giants made three major changes to their free agency approach this year. I'll tell you what they are coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, P-Train, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network. And a special welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members, my everydayers, my newcomers, and everybody in between. You are all appreciated and loved by yours truly. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And if we're not your first listen or watch, thank you all the same for tuning in to check out the Locked On Giants podcast. And on today's Locked On Giants podcast, what are three key philosophical changes that the New York Giants made for this cycle of free agency? I'm going to tell you what they are and why they were so important. So we'll kick off this podcast with that. And then we're going to move on to, in segment 2, we're going to talk about why I think the Giants punted on Justin Fields. I get a lot of questions as to why the Giants didn't even bother with that. And besides the fact that there were assets involved, I'm going to give you what I think the reason is why the Giants did not want to get involved with the Justin Fields trade. And then we'll wrap things up with a look at how the Giants stack up cost-wise against the rest of the NFL, the league average at each position. And I've noticed kind of a trend going on with the Giants, and it's a trend in the right direction. So I'll talk about that in the third segment of today's podcast. Again, welcome on in. Glad to have you. Let's jump in. Got a lot to go through as always. All right. Three key changes that the Giants made this year with free agency. Let me just start off by saying that these were changes that they should have been doing all along. These were like long overdue changes. They kind of got away from them last year, and it kind of caught up and bit them on the you-know-what. So they went back to the basics, stuff that they should have been doing all along, in my opinion. And we'll see how it plays out for them. You know, obviously, we still got to get through the off season, the rest of the off season, the OTAs, training camp, preseason, and so forth. But I think these moves that they made might put them in a little better position to be successful in 2024. All right. So what are these changes? Glad you asked. Number one, they addressed the roster from the inside out. Now, we constantly talk about, have the Giants close the talent gap between themselves and Dallas and Philadelphia? And for the answer, all you got to look at is the play in the trenches, where the Giants just absolutely got their butts handed to them in the trenches. All right. You saw, the offensive line get beat. At times, the defensive line was getting beaten. It just wasn't pretty. And any GM, I think, will probably agree that the best way to build a team is from the inside out, not from the outside in. So you start with the trenches, the O-line, the D-line, the pass rush, and that sort of thing. Because look, here's the bottom line. If you don't have a good offensive line, does it matter who your quarterback is or who your receivers are or who your running back is? No, it does not. You add to that group once you have a solid trench area on both sides of the ball. Same thing with, maybe safeties and stuff like that. So the Giants finally went back to building from the inside out. And I think that's going to make a big difference in their play this year. Of course, we've been saying this obviously for a number of years, every time they make a change on the offensive line. But I think it's going to pay off dividends for them because they finally approached it head on, inside out. All right. Item number 2, change number 2. They got away from taking gambles on guys who were coming off recent injury histories. So if you go back to last year, all right, last year they brought in Paris Campbell, who, in the 3 years prior had all kinds of injury issues. Darren Waller, who they acquired via trade, who had an injury history. I think Tommy Sweeney was another guy who ended up not even playing for them because of an issue. Uh, you can't bring in guys who have injury histories, recent injury histories, right? It just doesn't pan out. You can even throw in maybe Sterling Shepard into that group. And as much as I love the guy, and you know, I hate to say anything bad about him, but he was coming off of an injury. So you look at the guys, some of the main guys that they brought in this year. All right. John Runyon Jr., I don't believe has missed any games over the last 3 years, let alone his career, if I'm not mistaken. Jermaine Illuminor has only missed, I think, 3 games in his career over the last 3 years, that is. And Brian Burns, I believe, has only missed 2 over the last 3 years. That's what you want. You don't want guys who have been spending more time in the trainer's room because it impedes their development. And it just, it's like buying a lemon. If you're buying a new car and you buy a lemon, you hope that it works. You hope that it holds up. But, at the end of the day, you realize that maybe it's been held up by Scotch tape all this time. And maybe it wasn't the best investment of your dollars. So if you're going to invest in talent, get guys who are relatively healthy if you're a football GM, not guys with an injury history. And certainly don't spend big money on those guys. I mean, if you want them, maybe do the veteran minimum. But to spend big money on them never made any sense. And I think that's a lesson that maybe Joe Shane learned from last year. All right, the third item, set up for the quarterback, build around the quarterback. Now, look, I don't know ultimately what the long-term plan at quarterback is. I can guess and say that, ultimately the Giants are going to pivot away from Daniel Jones, but for the time being, the Giants have said that the expectation is that Daniel Jones will start if he is healthy. If he is not ready, you figure Drew Lock is going to get the starting assignment. Even if the Giants draft a quarterback, which I believe they will do in this draft, whether it's first round, second round, or whatever. But here's the thing, folks. All along, if you go back to when the Giants drafted Daniel Jones in 2019, were they really ready for him? The answer is no. And here's why they weren't ready for him. They didn't have a solid offensive line. Basically, their only offensive weapon at the time was Saquon Barkley. All right. They didn't really have solid receivers because they had traded away Odell Beckham Jr., I believe, that offseason. And what happened? You add all that up, plus the fact that Pat Shurmur, the head coach at the time, rushed Daniel Jones into the lineup after only just 2 games, having given up on Eli Manning, and it was a disaster. All right, Jones, he had his moments as a rookie, but ultimately it just set the tone for what would be a disaster coming, in subsequent years. Now, Jones's injuries obviously did not help, but think about it. Did he ever really have a solid support system in place as compared to some of his contemporaries? You could probably make the argument that he didn't, right? Now, regardless of what you think of him as a quarterback, if you think he stinks or, he's been a victim of circumstances, you got to make sure that the guy is set up to succeed. And if he doesn't, because he stinks, then you know what the problem is. And I think that's a big reason why, to this day, we are still asking, what exactly do the Giants have in Daniel Jones? They never set him up for success. They might have tried, but they went about it the wrong way. And I think maybe part of that was because, they had Saquon and they were like, oh, let's build the offense around Saquon and what he does best instead of tailoring it more towards the quarterback. So the Giants have changed that approach, right? They upgraded the offensive line. And I know it's going to, it remains to be seen if the offensive line has really been upgraded or if it's just on paper. They will probably draft a wide receiver, a number 1 receiver in next month's draft. I would be stunned if they don't. All right. A number 1 receiver will take what is already a decent enough receiver core to the next level. They are going to more of a committee approach at running back as opposed to having one bell cow. So, they didn't get away from the run game, but they're going to mix it up. Kind of like back in the day, if you remember when Brandon Jacobs and they had Ahmad Bradshaw, they kind of mixed it up between the two, power with finesse and that scat back ability. So I think that's what the Giants are gravitating towards with their running game. And again, doesn't matter really who the quarterback is, they're setting up for that person's success. And that's been missing despite their best intentions, their best laid plans. That has been missing for basically all of Daniel Jones's tenure. So it's nice to see that they are finally, waking up and making those changes. Now, how will all these changes that they made in their acquisitions play out? We'll have to see, obviously. But that's a quick rundown of the three major changes that they made in their free agency approach. All right, now coming up next, a lot of you have asked me, why were the Giants involved in the Justin Fields trade, especially after seeing what the Steelers gave up to get him? I'm going to give you my theory on that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you're having trouble finding those last minute tickets to your favorite concert shows and sporting events, GameTime has you covered. They offer a wide selection of seats complete with seat views to help you decide where to sit, and they're constantly offering last minute tickets through flash deals. There are no hidden fees. You'll know exactly what your deal is before you check out. And GameTime even has tickets available as late as an hour after an event starts, making it truly the best place to find last minute deals at amazing prices. Want more reasons to trust GameTime? They offer event cancellation protection, and if you find tickets in the same section and row for less elsewhere, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Terms apply. Hey, baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Lock On Sports Today. On March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get the local insight from the MLB local experts of Locked On Podcast Network. Again, find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And coming up this week on the Locked On Giants podcast tomorrow, Ed Valentine joins me. We're going to do a trade-off on our shows. He's going to be on my show. I'm going to be on his show. We'll talk Giants, what they've done in free agency, what they still need to do, and so forth. The usual stuff. And I'm sure there'll be some good-natured ribbing, as there always is whenever Ed comes on the show with me. So it's all good fun. We're friends, and we've been friends for the longest time. So that's what friends kind of do with each other. Also coming up on the Locked On Giants podcast on Friday, Locked On Giants Live, Traina Taina Dogs, 7:30 p.m. on the YouTube channel. Hope you will join us. If you can't make it, no worries. I'll post the audio for those of you who like to listen on audio. And those of you, of course, who like to watch us on YouTube, you'll be able to see the replay whenever you'd like. So hopefully, though, you'll be able to join us because it's always great to have, a big crowd in and interact with you guys and gals. So, all right. The Giants did not end up with Justin Fields. I know a lot of you asked me about him. Now, there was a report by Ian Rappaport of NFL Network that 4 teams were in the mix for Justin Fields. Disclaimer, I don't know if the Giants were one of those 4 teams. I don't believe they were, but it's possible they might have been. I don't think they were, though. That being said, here's why, the Giants, it didn't make sense for them, in my mind, at any rate, for them to make a trade for Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. Fields going to the Steelers, I believe. I think it was for a 6th-round pick. And basically, I go back to when Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were hired by the Giants, and they inherited Daniel Jones. And at the time, they had to make a decision on whether or not to pick up Daniel Jones's option year of his rookie deal. And if you remember, they didn't do so. Why? They never came out and said exactly why, but you can certainly point to Jones's injury history and his inconsistent play over the years. There was also, I believe, a sense of doubt, or not, maybe doubt's not the right word. There was a sense of wondering if Jones would be a fit for the system that Dable planned to implement. And of course, they took the gamble. Turns out that, they lost the gamble because we all know what happened with the contract, although the contract is not as bad as some of you would like to make it out to be because of the out that they have after this year. So anyway, from that experience, now you fast forward to Justin Fields. And Justin Fields, I believe, had the right to, I think he vetoed 3 or 4 different teams before deciding Pittsburgh was the best option for him. But here's the thing. So you're basically in the same situation with Justin Fields. A decision has to be made on his option year. Now it's up to the Steelers, who are going to decide whether or not to, pick that up or not. And Justin Fields is going to a team now in the Steelers where he's going to be probably behind Russell Wilson. So if you had brought Justin Fields over, if you were the Giants, assuming, that they weren't one of the teams that he vetoed, now what would you have done? You would have had Justin Fields, on the last year of his rookie deal, Daniel Jones on this monstrosity of a contract, which, again, they can't get out of until after this year. It just probably wouldn't have made sense. And, look, you look at teams that are rebuilding, and let's face it, folks, the Giants are rebuilding. The best course of action, if you can pull it off, and the Texans, by the way, are a really good example of this. They have, I think, 2 receivers on rookie deals. Their quarterback is on a rookie deal, and they've been able to take their financial resources and spread it out to the areas that are most important. So if you're the Giants, you probably want to follow that model. All right. And next month, in the draft, obviously, the Giants will probably dip into that deep wide receiver class. I still say if they stay at 6, it's going to be a receiver. They will probably dip into that deep quarterback class, whether that be, on day 2 in the second round, or if they trade back into the bottom of the first round. So that's the way you go about it. And I think if they had picked up Justin Fields, you really would have had him, on a cost-effective contract for this year. And there would have been no guarantee that he was going to start because, again, Shane has been saying all along, the expectation is Daniel Jones is going to start. And I think, I kind of get the feeling that, they want to give Daniel Jones one last crack at this because they will have to make a decision on him. But, here's what I guess the monkey wrench is for me. Daniel Jones has that injury clause in his contract. So if he can't pass a physical, if they decide to cut him next year and God forbid he gets hurt again, they're going to be on the hook for an additional $12 million in addition to whatever dead money that they would have had for next year. So it's really kind of a screwy thing, but I think in the long term, what the Giants would like to do, get a young quarterback in here. Drew Lock, I know, is only signed to 1 year, but if he does well, maybe you re-sign him again, to another year. And if not, you still have DeVito under contract. I mean, the quarterback position, I think, is just in total flux right now with the Giants. And I still say that if I were the Giants, I would have competition for Daniel Jones. I would not just say, here's the starting job. I think they're kind of doing that because Jones, you look at what he did in 2022, and I think that's what they're kind of hoping that he can get back to and what they believe he can be again. So, I just think, they've got to sort that out, obviously. And to have brought in, a Justin Fields, whether you like his skill set or you don't, it would have been a hefty financial investment for the long term for a team that, ultimately they've got, Kayvon Thibodeau's contract is going to be coming up, and, they're going to have some other deals that they're going to have to eventually look at. So that's my guess as to why, assuming the Giants weren't involved. And again, Rappaport didn't identify the other teams that inquired about Fields, but I'd be stunned if the Giants were one of them. Maybe they'll turn out to be, but the move just wouldn't have made sense. Get a quarterback in here on a rookie deal because you're not one quarterback away. And you don't even know if Justin Fields can take you to the promised land. Build up the trenches, kind of like I was talking about in the last segment. Build up the trenches and then start to fill in the sparse areas on the edges, and that's how ultimately the Giants will hopefully get back to being relevant again beyond Halloween. All right, coming up next, I took a look at how the Giants are faring cost-wise at each position group. And I mentioned the Texans before, and I kind of used them as kind of a basis, if you will. So I'll tell you how the Giants stack up at each position group, how the Texans stack up, and the league average. That'll be coming your way right after this. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, P-Train. And in this segment, we're going to talk dollars and cents. Now, this is something that I like to do because I always like to see how the Giants stack up against the rest of the league and the league average in terms of the financial resources that they've allocated to the various position groups. All right, so Spot Track is a really good source if you want to ever check this stuff out and just see like the whole league and how they stack up. But I have some numbers, and what Spot Track does is they break it down how much money is devoted to each position group: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, defensive backs, and special teams. And they have the league average. And I like to see if the Giants are over the league average and getting the production that they are paying for, or are they at the league average or under? So that to me kind of gives us a good picture, if you will, as to how the Giants are constructed. So let's run through it. And I'm also going to mention the Texans because, they're an up-and-coming team, and I think they're going about their rebuild the right way. So I'll mention kind of how they're doing as well, but the focus here will be mainly on the Giants. All right, so at quarterback, the league average, $26.5 million. The Texans are at $15.9 million. As I mentioned before, C.J. Stroud is on his rookie deal. The Giants, $48 million. That's all Daniel Jones, folks. So, can we say that the Giants are getting their money's worth out of the quarterback position? Nope. Overpaid right now. They are hoping to get their money's worth, but right now that cap figure is just absolutely gross, if we're being honest with you. All right, running back. The league average is $9.8 million. The Texans are at $13.7 million. Okay, not bad. The Giants at $7.8 million. To be determined if the Giants are getting the most out of that position. They are going to a committee approach as opposed to having Saquon Barkley in there when they, which they did for a number of years, be their bell cow. Wide receiver. The league average, $29 million. The Texans are at 23.6. The Giants are at 15. Are the Giants getting their money's worth out of their receiver group? I would say yes. I mean, it could be better. they're going to, I still say they're going to add a rookie to the group, and that's going to, help boost that group's production. But like I said, the top three of Slayton and Hyatt and Wandale Robinson, not a bad group. So I have no problem with the financial investment made in that group. Tight end. The league average is 11.1 million, which is also what the Texans are averaging. And the Giants are at 16.3. They getting their money's worth? They could get Darren Waller to stay on the field. Heck, if they could get Darren Waller to stop, to come back a year and be healthy, yeah, then you could say yes. But did they last year? Nope. All right. Offensive line. The league average is 42 million. The Texans are at 69.6 million. The Giants are at 44.8. So the Giants are trending in the right direction. To be determined, though, if they're getting their values worth out of that group. Defensive line, the league average is 35.4 million. The Texans, believe it or not, are at 13.5 million. I guess they got to add to that group. And the Giants are at 34.7. So the Giants are under the league average, but boy, are they getting their money's worth. Dexter Lawrence alone has been worth the money he's received. Linebacker, and this includes both, edge and inside linebacker. The league average is 26.8. The Texans are at 36.4. The Giants are at 38.8. Are the Giants getting their money's worth? I'd say yes. Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden was pretty good. Micah, of course, being on a rookie deal. Kayvon Thibodeau is on a rookie deal. Azeez Ojulari, who, when he plays, is actually not too bad, on a rookie deal. So, yeah, I'm fine with that amount. All right, defensive backs. The league average is 35.4 million. The Texans are at 39.9. The Giants at 17.2. They've got Deonte Banks on a rookie deal. Whether they add another cornerback in the draft, that'll also mean that cornerback will be on a rookie deal. Trey Hawkins is on a rookie deal. Cordell Flott is on a rookie deal. Did they get their values worth last year? Yeah, I think you could say so. I mean, it could have been a little bit better as far as, certain areas, but yeah, I think they did. I think they're fine there. And then finally, special teams, the league average is 6.4 million. The Texans are at 5.5. The Giants are at 10.8. Did they get their value next? Did they get their money's worth, the Giants last year? Not really. Injuries were a problem. All right, Jamie Gillen was fine. The long snapper, Casey Kreider, had no issues with him and the job he did. Unfortunately, the revolving door kicker, 4 different kickers, that wasn't very good. They didn't get their money's worth there. Not the kicker's fault, but still, if we're looking at the big picture, we got to look at everything. So, I think somebody had asked me about Graham Gano and what his medical status is. We haven't been in the building, and there's still time left, but Gano, from what I understand, or at least last I checked, was well on his way to being ready to kick by the start of the season. Whether he's going to kick a lot during the summer, I don't know, but he's trending in the right direction. So overall, folks, the money, you want to pour the money into the trenches. I keep saying that, your offensive line, your defensive line, that's where you really want to put your money if you're building a football team the right way. The skill position players, if you can get, when you're in the beginning part of a rebuild, if you can get your quarterback and maybe your receivers, and maybe another skill position player that's going to be a prominent part of your offense on rookie deals, you're going to be okay there. And for the Giants, remember, Wandale Robinson is on a rookie deal, as is Jalen Hyatt. So if they go and they get, another quarterback, he'll be on a rookie deal. And ultimately that value will shift, and it'll allow the Giants in the future to do even more with their financial assets. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for me on today's Locked On Giants podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Ed Valentine will join me. Going to be a lot of fun. So until then, everybody, have a great one, and I'll see you tomorrow.